continue.
Once again, I'm going to request that if you're not a board member, you have your computer on mute until your application is being heard, or I will mute you.
Hi, this is Chuck.
Thank you, Chuck. Mr. Ellis, I have 7 o'clock and you are here. Mr. Hobie is here. Mr. Nystrom is here. Mr. Renone is here. Mr. Thibodeau is here. All the regular members are here, and the 2 alternates, Mr. Alves and Mr. Atwood, are also present. So you have a full quorum.
Thank you.
I just want to make a couple announcements before we get started. First, as I had mentioned earlier, if your application is not being heard right now, please keep yourself on mute. Secondly, this will be the last time we will be doing a virtual meeting. The next meeting, members of the zoning board, unless you have a medical condition, will be live in person. We still will be streaming it both on Zoom as well as on YouTube, but we are returning back to live meetings in July. The third thing I want to mention is I will be sending out a link. The League of Cities and Towns and the Attorney General's office held a webinar last week on Robert's Rules of Order, as well as ethics for boards. I'm going to request that you all, when I send you the link, take the 2 hours to review that. The planning board will be under the same directive. The last announcement I want to make is that the zoning board has been named in a complaint regarding the Chomp matter with the Superior Court. So I am going to request that you do not have any conversation amongst yourselves or anyone else regarding anything related to that application without first talking to the solicitor. With that, Mr. Ellis, I pass the meeting over to you.
Bob, I'm not
Okay.
sure if I mentioned that the Board of Appeals is going to be heard after this.
Yes, I was going to let Mr. Ellis say that, but go ahead.
Yes, we've said that we're going to start with the zoning board of review. This is meeting for June 16th, 2021. The first item, we've done the roll call. We have a quorum present. We're going to postpone the approval of minutes because there was a delay in submitting them, so we will skip over that item. So we'll move directly into the new business. The first matter is application 2133. Randy White Jr. and Catherine Dean, the owners and applicants, Birch Swamp Road, plat 22 lot 4, requesting a variance, 3281 to farm and allow 2 storage containers on a lot with street frontage in the FC zoning district.
Mr. Ellis, Mr. Ellis, I would suggest Mr. Cavallo offer some background and context to this application prior to the applicants
All right,
speaking.
Mr. Cavallo.
Yes, can you hear me all right?
Yep, please go ahead.
Okay. This is a landlocked parcel in the middle of Chase Farm property. And it was a DEM hazardous waste cleanup site that has recently been released. And Randy and Kathy wanted to use the property, but it doesn't have any frontage on a road. So I told them we'd have to go to the zoning board before you could establish any type of a use on the property. You'd need a building permit just to establish the use. And fortunately, they have a couple of containers that they've put on the property that they need to permit. And that should provide adequate building permit to establish a use. What they plan to do there, I guess, is farming, which is appropriate for that zone. But because it was a landlocked parcel with no frontage on a street, I thought it should come to the zoning board for relief in order to develop it.
All right, and so the relief that they're requesting is the relief of the lack of the required frontage on the parcel.
Well, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The relief is the variance due to the lack of the required frontage length on the parcel. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, Joe, may I just chirp in for a second? In addition to
Certainly.
that, I think the board may, the second stage of this may want to look at the location of those 2 accessory structures in terms of setbacks and whether or not relief is necessary there also.
Okay, and there's a proposed plan, I believe, that's been submitted. So, Mr. Cavallo, do you have anything else to add before we have the applicants present their case?
No, I think we're okay on the setbacks, and also most of the parcel is in the flood zone, but they've positioned the 2 storage units so that they would be out of the flood zone area.
All right. So are there representatives of the applicant here to speak on this matter?
There is Mr. Ellis. Miss Kathy Dean is here, and I believe Mr. White might be here as well.
Yes, we are.
We're here.
If you could
Right.
just identify yourself, both your first name and last name and your address for the record, please.
Catherine Dean, 49 Stansbury Street, Providence, Rhode Island, 02908.
Thank you.
Randy White Jr., 138 Lexington Avenue, Providence, Rhode Island, 02907.
Thank you.
All right. So if one or both of you would just like to explain in a little bit more detail what your plans are for this property and why you have a hardship and need relief through a variance.
Yes, we purchased this property a few years ago, knowing that there had been an environmental problem caused by the previous owner. That environmental problem was addressed by the EPA that did a major remediation. Before we could continue, DEM requested another check of the property to make sure that it was not still contaminated. We hired a company to do that, to check the soil and the groundwater. They found one spot near the mouth of the property that was a little bit over the lead regulation that DEM has. We had what was called a hot spot removal. That all that soil was dug out, removed, and replaced by soil that had been approved by DEM. We got what they call a closeout letter. We're clean. We're good to go. EPA had to approve the sale of this property, and there were many, many people and companies interested in this property, but EPA wanted it returned to its original purpose, which was farming. The property was cut out of the Chase Farm in 1901. We get to the property via a right-of-way. We bought 2 storage containers to store our equipment, our materials, anything that we needed to start the farm. Not knowing at the time that in Rhode Island, and I think in only Rhode Island, that's not allowed. So we're appealing to the board for a variance. We have no frontage. We have plans to install the containers inside
Existing
an
foundation.
existing foundation, and which will, as Mr. Cavallo said, which will be up above the flood level. We'll be using these for storage, and we'll be working in that area, bringing in the crops and getting them ready for market. So that is our appeal.
Okay.
And give us a good consideration.
All right, and so the 2 containers, you're considering them accessory structures. And so, and I think Tony had said he's all right with the setbacks from the property line on where the proposed containers are located. Is that correct, Tony?
Yes, I believe that's correct. From what I could tell from the site plan, I believe it'll work.
And do we know the footprint dimension of each container? Was it under 120 square feet?
No, I think it's larger than that. So they have to be 10 feet.
They have to be 10 feet, all right.
Yeah.
So do we know the dimension of the containers?
20, 30 yards.
They're 240 yard. I mean, they're 8 by 40.
8 by 40.
8 by 40. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've got 320 square feet each. So I've got 10 feet.
They might be extended containers, Andrew. They have the extension on there, so they might be 40.
No, the extension is the height, sir.
What's that?
The extension is the height. They're high cube.
They're high cube. but
That
they-
doesn't make them any bigger. That doesn't make them have a bigger footprint.
We put a skid steer and a tractor, a farm tractor. We can fit a skid steer and a small John Deere farm tractor in them.
That's fine. I mean, whether it's under 120 or over 120, how much over it doesn't really matter. It would need to be 10 feet off the property line. And what I'm looking at, I see 7.9 feet to the foundation of the old ice house. And then it looks
Yeah.
like another 4 feet to the edge of the container. Is that correct?
The dimension of the ice house is 80 by 120.
That's fine. So the distance from the property line to the container looks like 11.9 feet. Is that correct?
I don't have the plan in front of me.
All right, well, I'll say
The
it's
distance from the property
based on
line.
the, yeah, based on the plan that has been submitted, it shows 11.9 feet from the property line to the container, which would comply with the 10-foot setback.
Okay, that's good.
So the only
Okay.
thing we're talking about really for the variance is the lack of frontage on a road, and that hardship is due to the unique character of the land, because you didn't cause that problem. That's how the land was carved out, and I think you said 1901.
Right.
Exactly.
So this hardship has not been caused by any actions or any fault of your own.
Right.
I'm just going to ask the board if they have any comments or concerns. Mr. Holby, would you like to comment?
Well, I was wondering how long the property's been owned. It said a couple of years. Is it 2 or is it 3 years?
Didn't hear the question, sir. Could
Is
you repeat your question?
Yeah, how long have you owned the property?
3 years,
No, it's more.
4
4
years,
years.
4 years.
4 years.
Yes.
And so in that time, you've gotten the approvals from the DEM and EPA to build the slab and do this. And you say you're going to be farming.
Yes.
My walk down there, have you started farming? You haven't
No.
started farming yet, correct?
No, we had to get the closeout letter from DEM. First.
We had self-engineering come in and do additional environmental work for DEM. After the environmental work was completed by self-engineering, the paperwork or reports were submitted to DEM Stephanie.
Yeah.
And then they had a committee that reviewed the results, and they sent us our closeout letter.
Okay. I guess I have a question on, you've got a skid steer down there.
Yeah.
I was just sort of wondering if you were farming, why it would be a skid steer instead of a tractor. And I'm wondering, what will you put in the storage metal containers? The tractor and the skid steer, or?
As we speak, we have agricultural equipment in the containers. The skid steer we bought a grapple to move logs and to move stones that oozes up out of the soil. We also need the skid steer to do agricultural work that the farm tractor is unable to do.
Do you have a farm tractor now or no?
No, we're in the process of purchasing one.
I can't hear.
I'm sorry. We're in the process of purchasing one now.
She mentioned that she's in the process of purchasing it now, Mr. Holt.
We didn't want to bring any more equipment onto the farm without going through this hearing.
Okay. And do you have any other farming experience?
Elizabeth City, North Carolina, Possible Tank Outer Banks.
Okay.
And I work for the United States Soil Conservation Department in Middletown, New York. And I work right now at the Naval Submarine Base in Groton, Connecticut as an environmental health and safety consultant. And I went to URI where I got my master's in microbiology and clinical laboratory science. I'm in the class of 2010. So all this information, this background information, I had to submit to EPA and also to DEM because they wanted to know, are we truly intent on farming? Which we are.
Which you are.
And I also design irrigation ditches in Orange County, New York for the farmers to prevent soil erosion. During that time, I worked under Malcolm Hennings in Middletown, New York, covering the Orange County area, Monroe, Woodbury, Port Jervis, Goshen, New York, Middletown, Orange, New York.
Yeah, so I think the farming aspect, they're allowed to farm in this zone. It's an appropriate use for the zone. So it seems like they're following the use per what is allowed in this zone. And it looks like the only impediment they have from a zoning standpoint is just that their property doesn't actually abut a roadway.
Right.
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 And you
All right.
have an easement that allows you access to the property, I think you
Yes,
stated.
we
Yeah.
have a right of way.
Yes.
So as far as the use goes, you wouldn't be adverse to just making sure that it's only limited to that. There wouldn't be any other recycling, any metal work done there,
No.
anything like
No.
that. Just be farming.
No,
No.
none of that.
Well, we consider ourselves gatekeepers to the earth. I'm pretty much into environmental stuff. Besides farming, I look for environmental hazardous materials such as asbestos, PCBs, certain soil VOC, soil contaminants, semi-VOCs. The issue here, I couldn't do the environmental work myself because it would have been a conflict. So we spent thousands of dollars to hire an environmental consultant to do what DEM requested.
So I just want to remind the board that the question on the table, the applicant is not, you're not weighing in on the use, you're weighing in on the variance.
That's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Roman.
thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Holby?
No, that should do it.
I'd like to say one more thing.
Mr.
spoke with,
White, Mr. White, I'm going to stop you because
Okay,
we're going to hear from other members of the board first. please.
okay.
Sure. Mr. Thibodeau, do you have anything you'd like to add about the variance for the frontage of the property?
No, I do not. Barrett seemed to cover everything.
Great. Mr. Renone? Okay, Mr. Nystrom, that was a no from Mr. Renone. Mr. Nystrom,
No questions.
great. Mr. Elves, are you there somewhere?
Yep.
Yes, there you are.
No
And-
question.
Great, Mr. Atwood,
I have no questions.
terrific. Okay, we will go to the public portion of the hearing. If anyone, a member of the public participating on Zoom or by phone would like to comment, please in some way indicate that.
You can use, if you're here on Zoom, you can use the raise your hand icon, or you can wave profusely if you're having a medical condition, and I'll see you. Mr. Ellis, I don't see any.
Okay, we'll close the public portion commentary. So to the applicants, do you have any other testimony specific to the variance relating to the frontage? I think we've heard your intended use of the property, and that's all well and good, but is there anything else specific about the frontage that you would like to explain to the board?
I don't think there's anything to explain. The property came that way since
Yep.
1991. So there's nothing else to say. That's a fact.
Very good. Does anyone else on the board have any other final comments before we entertain a motion?
I think Mr. White was going to say something. I was
You would
wondering.
like to hear it?
Yeah, I couldn't hear
Okay.
Ken, but Mr. White seems to be audible.
Well, we're a nonprofit and we're working with you. We will be working with URI to bring interns from the School of Agriculture to work with us. In addition, we met with Dr. Fari, where they have a pilot program where they're going to be growing saffron. And so we carved out a spot on the land for him to come and plant after this is completed. Also, we also plan to work with not only the URI Ag School, but University of Connecticut Ag School and UMass to bring to create some type of internship program, because we need agriculture to make a comeback. And
Yes.
that's really, really important. In addition, Rhode Island is looking for 10% self-sufficiency. And plus we import a lot of agricultural produce from Central and South America. And why not here? Why not here?
Yeah, well, that sounds like a very innovative initiative. So I think we've heard all of the testimony regarding the proposed variance. Does someone want to make a motion on the
Mr.
frontage?
Ellis, if I could just interrupt, I apologize. Ms. Fortin
All right.
has just sent me a message through chat that she is in a butter and would like to offer some public
Okay.
comment.
So let's reopen the public comment. Ms. Fortin, would you like to speak?
I'm going to be cautious about what I say.
Please
because
identify yourself, name and address for the record, please.
Rondalee Fortin, Birch Swamp Road 34. I would just
Thank you.
urge the board to please be mindful and specific of if they place any conditions of what can be done down there. As Mr. Holby has mentioned, very good questions. So please be mindful if you place conditions of what can and can't be done down there. I am a direct abutter to the right of way. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fortin. And I would say that because we are not approving a special use, we are only approving a dimensional variance. Any conditions would specifically have to relate to the dimensional placement of the storage containers in question. I'm sorry, it would have to relate to the frontage. The storage containers, I mean, we can condition it that the storage containers have to be per the plans within the setbacks, but any other conditions would have to relate specifically to the lack of the frontage on the property. So if anyone would like to make such a motion.
Going once, going twice.
I will give this one a shot, and I will leave it to the chairman and the solicitor to tell me whether or not we overstep. I will move approval of application 29-33, Randy White Jr. and Catherine Dean, owners and applicants, Birch Swamp Road, Plat Map 22, Lot 4. Request for a variance under section 32-81 to farm and allow 2 storage containers on a lot without street frontage in an FC zoning district. In approving this variance, we will note that the hardship is due to the unique characteristic of the subject land or structure, in so much as this is a landlocked inbound parcel that does not have any frontage on the nearest adjacent roadway. We will note that the hardship is not a result of a prior action of the applicant. The lot has always been this way. And that in granting the requested variance, this will not alter the general character or the surrounding area. The proposed intent for this parcel would be farming in nature. They do have a right of way out to Birch Swamp Road. And as that is the nature of the parcel and the intended use for that parcel, setting it that far back off the road should not in any way, shape, or form affect the general character of the surrounding area. We find that the relief being granted, in so much as it is allowing this parcel to have 0 frontage on a road, that is the least relief necessary, in so much as if we were to not grant this variance, the parcel would functionally be unusable. That is also the reason why, if we were not to grant this variance, it would constitute more than a mere inconvenience to the applicant. In granting this variance, we will condition it on the fact that the 2 storage units be located as per the site plan and at least 10 feet from all abutting lot lines. And we will further note that the approval of this variance is being granted based on the testimony we have heard that the use of this land is expected to be farming in nature.
Absolutely.
May I suggest, just in addition, the application talks about wetlands. Why don't we condition this on local approval, all local approvals, state approvals, federal approvals, considering the site and also wetlands on the property? I think that's appropriate.
So amended.
Are there any other conditions for the motion? Is there a second?
Second, this is Mr. Nystrom.
There's a motion by Mr. Renaud and a second by Mr. Nystrom. I will do the roll call. Mr. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Nystrom. Give me a hand signal, Mr. Nystrom.
Aye. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Renaud,
Aye.
Mr. Holby,
Aye.
Mr. Thibodeau.
Aye.
Okay, and we do not have to have the vote from the alternates. Ms. Dean and Mr. White, congratulations, you can move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is application 21-34, Jeffrey and Rochelle Blease. And I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
We're not here anymore. We can't listen to them. We
Right.
can leave now.
Yep, you can leave. You're done. Owners, John Sheridan, applicant, 1 North Street, plat map 16, lot 266. Request for a variance under sections 3277 and 32-88 subsection C to replace existing accessory structure in the front yard with less than the required side and front yard setbacks in the R40 Village Overlay Zoning District. I know Mr. Sheridan is here, and I believe that his clients are also here. Mr. Sheridan, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is John Sheridan with Sheridan Associates. I'm at 34 Brownell Street in Warren. I'm the architect and the general contractor for the owners of 1 North Street, Jeff and Rochelle Blease. The owners are present and will be commenting after my testimony. The owners are requesting a variance approval to allow a shed to be located in their front yard. The building permit for this project included renovating the existing shed located in the front yard with a new window, door, wall, shingles, and roof shingles. After the owner performed a water test of their well, they discovered that their existing well needed extensive repairs, including raising the wellhead above ground and replacing existing water treatment equipment with a full reverse osmosis system, which is large and heavy. The existing shed, due to rotten framing, including the floor joist, was not structurally adequate to handle this equipment. The water treatment company, Northeast Water Solutions, requested a new 12 by 12 shed to house the extensive water treatment system. I submitted earlier today the original diagram of the shed size and equipment locations that they provided me. This was not the same size as the existing shed, so I had them redesign the equipment locations to be able to fit into a 9 by 11 shed, the smallest possible, to house the equipment and maintain the same setbacks. The new shed is located in the same location as the existing shed with the same front and side yard setbacks. The existing shed and replacement shed's location in the front yard is fairly common in a house that is on the water in the Tuisac community. Finally, there was no other place for the shed. The front, the water side of the house, from the line of the house forward towards the bay, is all in the floodplain, so we could not place it there. As well as there's a new septic in that area, as well as a large drain field for the reverse osmosis system in that area. And in the front, the only other location in the front yard is occupied by a underground propane tank. Those are kind of the technical aspects of the application. And I think Mr. Blease, Jeff Blease, is here to comment on kind of his personal experience with the water.
All right, we can hear about that. But so basically the purpose of the shed is to house the wellhead and water treatment equipment. Is that correct?
The wellhead is adjacent to it. It's 2 feet away from it. And it, in the past, it just had kind of a normal water treatment system, and the well water is completely shot. I can't use technical terms, but it's full of manganese, and it requires if you have the diagram, that Northeast, it's a huge reverse osmosis tank and many other little components.
So the shed is located where it is to service the wellhead, which is in the vicinity.
Right, it's right there, yes.
All right, so Mr. Blease, would you like to offer any description of what the hardship is on your well shed?
Happy to, thank you. And thank you, members of the board, for your service to the town, having been in public service myself. I appreciate the time and sacrifice that it takes. So thank you for doing this.
Mr. Belize, could you just identify your name and address for the record, please?
Of course, Jeff Blees, 1 Calder Drive, Warren is our permanent address. So North Street is a very small street. It's a dead-end street with 3 families at the end, just to give you some context for this. I've lived in Tawisset since 1966, so I'm very familiar with the fragility of our aquifer at Tawisset and how we need to be vigilant and, you know, continually paying attention to our wells. So we purchased the One North property back in 2014. And at the time, it had a well pit. You know, if you recall the old fashioned, they're down about 6 feet or whatever it is to get below the frost line. And that well pit sat at the end of what was then the unpaved North Street. We tested the water when we purchased the property. It was fine. So we, you know, have been using the property since 2014. When we started the renovations and improvements back in last fall, we had the water tested again, and the test came back, as John said, it's like a parade of horribles. So it's total dissolved solids, some salt intrusion, and manganese, pretty major problems. So we turned then to Northeast Water Solutions to see what they could do to solve the problem, so we'd have potable water. And their recommendations were to raise the well casing up to grade, which we did, and then to install a complete reverse osmosis system to essentially take out the dissolved solid and everything else. So in our moving forward with that, we asked John to design and construct a shed that would be aesthetically pleasing, fit into the neighborhood, and look like it's, you know, part of a parcel, part of the buildings around there, which he did. We weren't thinking about a variance at the time, of course, because there was a shed in the same location at the time, which we had planned to use, but the joists were rotten and there were some folks living under it. Let's just say that, which is pretty typical for and by that, of course, I mean raccoons and woodchucks and things like that. So that building wouldn't work. But at the time, we were really focused on getting potable water because that's obviously critical to being able to use the property. So with that, you know, we're asking for a variance from the front yard setback. And as John pointed out, you know, because the property fronts on the water, the front yard is, of course, next to the road, which has now been paved. This building basically being in the same location of the prior existing shed will serve to house this equipment that unfortunately we had to buy to produce potable water. So
okay.
That's why.
So basically, the shed is going essentially where the dilapidated shed was that had to be removed. It's the same size as the previous shed, and it's located there because it's in proximity to the wellhead, and the purpose of the shed is to service the well. That's all correct?
The size, John, can you confirm that? I don't know off the top of my head.
The size it's slightly more rectangular than the old shed, but it still respects the same front and side yard setbacks.
And it looks like what it actually looks like in the document here, the new shed is 99 square feet and the original record had the shed as 140.
It did as 140. I think that was inaccurate. I think it was smaller than 140.
Well, in any event, it's less than 120.
Yes, it's right. Yes, for sure. It's 9 by 11. So.
Fine. Okay. Mrs. Blees, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Holby.
Is this, I think I might have missed something. Has the shed already been replaced? And we're trying to clean up the paperwork for
yes,
variance. So that there's already, the new shed is already there. And we just want to get the variance done.
Mr. Ellis, did you want to hear from Mr. Cavallo on this?
Oh, did he have something he'd like to add?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, as Mr. Holby indicated, we're kind of trying to fix this after the fact.
All right, Tony, would you like to explain?
Yes, the shed was already built and they just kind of put the cart in front of the horse.
Okay, and it was a replacement of the existing shed because the existing shed was dilapidated and not structurally sound.
They're not quite big enough for the tanks, I think. Is that correct? Is it one of the storage water tanks had to be moved?
Well, it was more about the size of the tank is 48 inches in diameter. I think it was a 500-gallon tank. I can't recall that it just wouldn't have supported it.
But to your point, Mr. Holby, there was some activity that occurred kind of in advance of proper approvals.
Right. Okay, just wanted to clear that up. There's a lot of new sheds down there, I can tell you that. Looks all very nicely designed.
Okay, Mr. Thibodeau?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, Mr. Ranone,
I'm good.
Mr. Nystrom,
No questions.
Alves,
No questions.
Mr. Atwood.
No questions.
Okay, we'll go to the public portion of the hearing. And when the public wishes to speak on the application, please indicate so.
You can do that either by raising your hand with the icon, or I don't see anyone, Mr. Ellis.
Okay, so Mr. Sheridan or Mr. Blease, do you have any other issues you'd like to put before the board relating to the variance that you're requesting for the setbacks of the front and side yard for the shed?
I have none.
I don't think so. We've talked to most of the neighbors and that they're fully supportive, so I guess I would add that.
Any further discussion or comments from the board regarding the relief for the shed dimensions, for the setback dimensions? Okay, would like to make a motion on this application.
I will move approval of application 21-34, Jeffrey and Rochelle Blease, owners, and John Sheridan, applicant. 1 North Street, plat map 16, lot 266, request for a variance under sections 32-77 and 32-88C to replace an existing accessory structure in a front yard with less than required side and front yard setbacks in the R40 Village Overlay Zoning District. In approving this variance, we will note that the hardship is due to the unique characteristic of the subject land or structure, in so much as the location of the shed will service the now renovated wellhead, and that due to the nature of most housing and plats in the Tuisset district that front the water, what we as zoning and building officials will think of as the front yard is not necessarily what the residents think of as the front yard. That the hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant. Hydrology science is what it is, and the necessary renovation of the well was a requirement in order to be able to continue using the plat as a residence. And the existing shed was rotting and non-serviceable, and it was not adequate to service and house the required filtration system. The granting of this variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area. The replacing of the existing shed with the new shed is respecting the existing front and side yard setbacks. It is actually a smaller structure than what was there previously. And we are aware of the fact that there are a number of other newer sheds being built in what is functionally the front yard elsewhere in this neighborhood. And we will note that the relief is the least relief necessary in so much as the size of the shed has been calculated and installed to house the necessary reverse osmosis filtration system that will allow the water service on the property to continue to serve the resident family well into the future. If this variance were not to be granted, it would be more than a mere inconvenience, as this property would no longer be served with a supply of potable water.
All right. Are there any conditions or amendments to the motion? Is there a second?
I'll second it. This is Mr. Nystrom.
Mr. Renone has made a motion and Mr. Nystrom has seconded. I'll do the roll call. Mr. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Nystrom,
Aye.
Mr. Renone,
Aye.
Mr. Holby,
Aye.
and Mr. Thibodeau.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Sheridan and Mr. and Mrs. Police.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
The next application is 21-35, Avilia RJ Associates owners, Bank Newport and Graphic Impact Signs applicants, 323 Market Street, plat map 22, lot 188, request for a variance under section 32-169 subsection B and 32-169 subsection D4 to install an internally illuminated sign that exceeds the maximum signage area in the rural business zoning district. I do see that there is someone from Graphic Impact Signs here. If that individual would like to identify themselves, name, address, and a summary of what you are requesting, that would be appreciated.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chad Bulletin with Graphic Impact Signs located at 575 Dalton Avenue in Pittsfield, Mass. 01201 on behalf of Bank Newport for the location at 323 Market Street in Warren, Rhode Island. So Bank Newport is recently undergoing some upgrades to this location, and they are upgrading their ATM to an ITM, and in doing so are looking to upgrade their signage as well on the building. They're looking to remove the 2 internally illuminated wall mount box signs and replace with 2 internally illuminated sets of channel letters, keeping with the same quantity that's currently there. We would remove the wall sign that is currently on the north elevation and locate it to the west elevation of the building due to the fact of the abutter next to the lot here. The building kind of blocks that elevation and the visibility of the sign, kind of rendering it useless at that point. So locating it to the front of the building will make it visible at that point yet again. And keeping with the south elevation sign present there, so traffic that flows up the flowing north can make sure they turn on Schoolhouse Road there to enter the bank at that entrance. We are not looking to do anything to the pylon sign. It's just all on the wall mount signage here. And the signage is looking to also fit aesthetically in the elevations that are being renovated there at the building.
And the ITM, as you have referred, is that a COVID-related change into the operation of how the bank functions?
It's an upgrade to their ATM machine that is located through the drive up. So that machine is becoming outdated and they have to upgrade them every so many years. And
this gives them access to an actual live person in an office someplace. So in lieu of going into the bank, they can have personal contact with someone through this technology. Is that correct?
Correct. It'll be a live person from the hours of 7 to 7, and then it will be an ATM for 24/7 after that. So you have the option to either use it as an ITM or an ATM.
But it's a COVID impacted change.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and well, so basically, I mean, the replacement of the machine, I mean, you can do whatever you want with that. The variance really has nothing to do with the machine itself. It's more for your taking down existing signs that are attached to the building and proposing to place them with new signs attached to the building. That's basically the proposal.
Correct. I'm just saying because of the upgrade of the machine, they're looking to upgrade the signage.
Great. So we'll first need to discuss the internal illumination, which is not permitted in this zone, regardless of if you had it in the existing signs that may have predated the ordinance, but internal illumination will not be permitted. However, we have been inclined in the past to permit rear illuminated halo lettering, and if you need more of a description of that, Mr. Renone can speak to that aspect. Jason, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yeah, so if I may clarify first, the existing signage has already been removed. Is that correct?
No, it is currently still there on the building.
It is still there.
Yes.
No, it isn't.
Oh, it's not. I was recently there. I thought on the 25th of last month, and they had this one on the, trying to use the elevations correct here. The south side was still there.
I
And I
believe
th-
those are gone now.
Okay, they did take those down now.
Yeah, I think so. If my memory serves me right from yesterday, they're gone.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I drove by there recently and I don't recall there being any signage on the building at all. So
I trust your memories a bit more than mine. Haven't been down there quite some time from the
no, it's okay.
renovations.
And I think where the point of that is just that it's no longer grandfathered in once it's been removed. So now that the sign boxes are gone, new signs have to comply with the current standards. So Jason, we're going to talk about what the creative way we've worked around internal illumination.
Yeah, so although we all recognize that the requirements of the Warren sign ordinance can be restrictive depending on exactly where you happen to be located in the town of Warren. The essential core to the no internal illumination idea is that channel letters are not permitted. What we have permitted in other circumstances is halo letters. So essentially, the lighting is installed within the signage, but it is shining back onto the wall of the facility rather than glowing forward out of the front face of the letters. It allows an outline of the sign or the lettering to be visible and readable in the evening, but is a much less visually obtrusive and attention grabbing kind of visual appearance, which seems more appropriate in this particular area of town. If you had to look for a reasonable example, just down the road closer towards the Massachusetts line, TPI Industries did a very successful application of that type of signage within the last couple of months. And for anyone who has driven by that installation in the last couple of months, I think everyone would say that that is sort of the visual impact that we would hope after hours nighttime signage would have. You can clearly identify what company it is. You can notice the fact that there is a sign there, but it is not distracting, it is not glary, and it is not obtrusive in the nighttime environment. So if there were to be a lighting statement made in signage for an evening look, that is the preference that this board has shown in the past. Old school aluminum box channel letters in this particular district are simply a non-starter.
And I would also say that if you don't like the look of the rear lit halo lettering, you can simply go with some kind of a gooseneck fixture lighting up solid applied letters on the building. That's been done elsewhere, or some kind of solid sign panel that you then have some kind of lighting shining down from the roof or something to illuminate it. So there are other options, but the thing that we found most successful in lieu of true internal illumination would be the halo illumination.
They have done halo lit at some of their other locations as well, so they understand that the internal illumination of the channel letters versus the halo lit.
Yeah, and we're also not the pylons. You're not touching it. The pylon is allowed to remain as it is until such point as they might decide to renovate that.
Okay.
Then could you speak to the square footage of the signage? Tell us how the square footage of the sign compares with the existing. I know the existing was sort of a box where we're counting, the whole area of the box, whereas the new sign is proposed to be individual letters and graphics. So we would sort of take the area of box that would just encompass the letters themselves. So do you have figures on that?
Yes, so the old signs, I believe, were at 14 square feet. And
Each?
Yes, on each elevation on the wall mount signs there. And each new set of halo lit letters, let's use that instead of channel letters. We're looking to actually increase to 36 square feet so they fit in the eave a bit better. The other box signs were a bit tiny and unreadable at the size that they were at, in the fear that is if these were at channel letters, but now halo lit letters, that same impact would be caused because of the setback of the building. So the increase in size is to fit aesthetically into the eave while keeping readability from the street.
So each piece, sign grouping is 36 square feet. So you're going to have a total of 3 of those. So you've got 108 square feet of signage in total.
No, there'll only be
Not
two sets.
count-
There's 2 sets of halo letters. There's only one on the south elevation and one on the west elevation.
Okay, so what was the third thing?
We did originally submit, sorry, I have a Macan, he's kind of going crazy. 1 second. Okay, sorry. We originally had 3 sets, but when I went to the site meeting with the client, I strongly advised them that in keeping with the existing structure that was there, we should stay with 2 wall signs. And with that one elevation on the north side being blocked by the abutters, that halo lit letters on that end would basically be served renderless because they would not be visible due to the fact of the building and the other sign in the way. So
Okay, so you're going to have 2 sets of these halo letters on the building.
Yes.
That's 36 square feet each. That's 72. And that's added to the existing pylon sign, which does it say it's 30 square feet?
Yes.
Is that 30 square feet per face on the pylon, or that's the total sum of both sides of the pylon?
To my understanding, of pylons, it's a double face. It's the whole square footage is the same, whether it's double or single sided. So it would be 30 square feet overall.
So it's 15 feet on each face. Did you understand that?
I have it as
You know
30
the-
square feet. I have total. I don't have the breakup of each face.
I think that's correct. It's 15 feet on each side. It's just.
Yeah, I don't think it's 30 square feet.
I don't
on
think
a
so
side. That would
either.
be awful
Yeah,
big.
that would be pretty, gigantic there.
So we've got a total of then 72 plus 30, so we've got 102 square feet of signage where, what do we have, 15 is allowed or 30?
30 is allowed.
30 is allowed. And so the justification for the size of the sign, from your opinion as signage designer, is that the size reflects visibility from the road, given that the building is set back some distance from the road and is sized to accommodate traffic passing by on Market Street, be able to see and identify the location.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Holby, do you have anything you'd like to have clarified?
No, it just sounds to me from you talking, it sounds like they're asking for an extra 30 square feet of signage with, there was 3 14 square foot signs. I think in the middle one, the one facing the street, the west one was bigger than that. But now that they're eliminating the north one and then you add in the other one, somehow I get 72 feet minus 102 feet, and they're only asking for 30 extra. But driving by that building, the 2 signs on the north and south end were smaller than the west side facing the street. That's what I recall.
I don't think there wasn't anything on the west side from the way the picture looks.
Is that true?
Right, the west, and so in the existing, before the renovation started, from the pictures,
There
I
was
see
only
that-
some on the north and south. There wasn't any on the west elevation at that time.
yeah, the west had nothing at that time.
Okay.
But I mean, just from the picture, you can't read the things that are on the north and south anyway, so I don't know that those were terribly effective to start with.
Right. I don't really have any other questions than that.
Okay, Mr. Thibodeau,
I don't have any questions at this time.
Mr. Ranone,
No questions.
Mr. Nystrom,
No questions.
Mr. Alves,
No questions.
Mr. Atwood.
Just one comment, and it's
Yeah.
probably in the noise, but when I do out the math of the 36 square foot sign, it assumes almost like a square area, whereas the individual signs, there actually is area, like volume, that is not taken up. So if one were to do, it is, I understand where the 36 feet come from, but the actual amount of signage will be, I think, less. You'll be able to see the building through the lights, the letters that would now be haloed or whatever, as opposed to the existing signs, which are, blocks, and the entire portion is a sign. So just thinking about the areas identified as 36, but there will be some of that will be open space.
I think, that's a valid thing to take into consideration. The official calculation by the ordinance does state that it is the tightest fitting rectangle that will encompass all of the graphics, but I think it is important to note that sort of the negative space in the sign is not another sign material acting as a background. It is open to the building, so that may be somewhat of a mitigating factor to the overall size of the sign. Okay, is there anyone in the public who would like to offer any comments on this application?
And again, if you're here from the public and you'd like to speak, use the raise your hand icon, or if you're on screen, I don't see anyone. I would say no, Mr. Ellis.
Great. All right, so where I'm hearing this is at is what was proposed to be channel letters. We're going to convert those to halo letters. We're going to keep the existing pylon. It's not being affected. And the two locations for the new signage will be on the west and south of the building.
Do you give them an option for halo letters or the gooseneck lighting? Or do you just say halo, or let them have?
Well, we can say whatever they want as long as it's not internally illuminated. So I don't know that I have to decide specifically at this moment, but that's at your preference. I think we would want to condition that potentially whatever lighting solution is used for the sign would not permit light trespass onto adjacent properties.
Of course.
Any comments from the board? Not hearing any. Would someone care to make a motion on this application?
I could do this one.
Okay, thank you.
I will move approval of application 21-35, Avila RJ Associates owners and Bank Newport and Graphic Impact Signs applicant, 323 Market Street, Plat Map 22, Lot 188. Request for a variance under section 32-169B and 32-169D4 to install an internally illuminated sign that exceeds the maximum signage area in the rural business zoning district. In approving this variance, we will note that the hardship is due to the unique characteristic of the subject land or structure, in so much as the requested amount of signage on the property will be 102 square feet, where 30 square feet is allowed by the signage ordinance. Due to the nature of the building, the fact that it is set back from the street, and the fact that the adjacent Metacom Avenue corridor is actually, I think it's Market Street corridor at that point, Route 136, one way or the other, is a relatively high-speed roadway, and in order to gather the attention of drivers passing by and make sure that they understand where the business is located, an additional amount of signage is required. The hardship is not due to the result of any prior action of the applicant. The building and business have been there. This is a function of a renovation and upgrade to the property. And in doing so, there is a desire by the applicant and the tenant to upgrade the signage associated with the business. In granting the requested variance, it will not alter the general character of the surrounding area. These signs will, to a certain extent, be replacing existing internally illuminated signage. However, they will be an upgrade and an improvement to the existing signage. And as they are a replacement, they do need to come into compliance with the current signage ordinance or the variance that we are now approving. And in granting this relief, we find that it is the least relief necessary, that 102 square feet where 30 is allowed. If we were to not approve this variance, it would be more than a mere inconvenience, in so much as the owners and business operators would only be left with the pylon sign on the street frontage, and the building itself would not have any identifying signage. We will condition this variance on the fact that internally illuminated signage is not allowed in this zoning area under the current zoning signage ordinance. So the lighting options that are afforded to the applicant for lighting this particular signage would either be to externally illuminate the signage or to use a halo lettering style system where the lighting is mounted within the signage and it shines back towards the building structure, not outwards towards the street. We would further condition that on the fact that whatever lighting solution is chosen will not produce any light trespass off of the subject land that we are discussing, and it will not direct any lighting towards the street or towards abutting properties.
Mr. Renaud, congratulations on your assistant being as articulate as she was.
Yes, she was parroting it into my ear. I trust her opinion.
That was awesome.
Are there any other conditions or amendments to the motion? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so Mr. Renaud has made a motion with assistance from his daughter. Mr. Holby has seconded it. I will poll the members. Mr. Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Nystrom?
Aye.
The Renaud family?
Aye.
Mr. Holby?
Aye.
Hey, there you go. You're all set? Thank you, sir.
Thank you all for your
I'm
time.
sorry, Mr. Thibodeau, I apologize.
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry, Chuck.
Thank you all for your time and enjoy your evening.
You have a good evening.
That was kind of sadistic. All right, application 21-36, Paul Bullock owner and Craig Spees applicant, 277 Water Street, plat map 4, lot 25, request for a variance under sections 32-78 and 32-105 to change use from commercial to single-family dwelling with less than required parking, frontage, front, rear, and side yard setbacks, and to exceed the maximum lot coverage in the waterfront zoning district. Is there anyone here on behalf of this application?
I see Mr. Spees.
Hello.
Greg, good evening. Is Mr. Bullock accompanying you, or are you on your own?
He knows about it. He may be cooking. I'm not sure if he was able to join in. I'm looking for him.
Spees, if you would just identify yourself, full name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Greg Spees, I'm an architect at 24 Linden Street in Warren.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spees. So I just want to clarify, the purpose of the variance is for the dimensional relief due to the existing conditions of the frontage and the setbacks and also the amount of the lot coverage and the amount of space available or not available for parking. And that the change of use from commercial to single-family dwelling really has no zoning implications because single-family dwelling is a permitted use in this district. It's more of an informational note than anything about what you're doing with the property. So what the board will be hearing testimony about is specific to the dimensional requirements for this property. If you'd like to give us the presentation on that.
Michelle said, and Mr. Cavallo can weigh in on this, this is another situation where this is currently being used as a single family residence. This is another cart before the horse. And
Well,
this is the request to do this. This is like, we're already doing this.
Well, I would say, though, that the request for the use has nothing to do with the zoning board. I mean, that could be a building code issue, changing a commercial building into a residential building. But as far as zoning is concerned, we're not asking, there's no use variance here. It's a dimensional variance for the property to meet the requirements of the setbacks in this district. So I think we need to keep the testimony to the dimensional aspect of the variance.
Yes, we are going to be going before the Building Code Board of Appeals.
Yeah, that
so
is a different.
So we will address
different aspect.
Mr. Cavallo's concerns. Yeah.
So for zoning purposes, let's just talk about what is required for the frontage, setbacks, lot coverage, parking, etc., and why the property does not meet those dimensional requirements.
Okay. Well, my understanding of surveying a property and looking into it is that it's an historical lot and was basically as commercial property on the waterfront, had no setbacks. So it was built right to the frontage on Water Street, and then the side yards were minimal. One, it's literally on the line, and the other is only about less than 2 feet away. The rear lot is also not what we, the 20-foot required. It's more like 13 feet, and there's an outdoor deck built on it. So the lot coverage is about 83% because of this siting. So that also is not the 30% required. The building does have, it's within the height limits. It's 21 feet high and a 35-foot height zone. And, but it just has a 24-foot frontage. So it's basically a non-conforming lot in a historical zone, sort of, I don't know if you call it grandfathered, but anyway, it's been used as a residence. At this point, it's structured not as a commercial property. And I don't know when this was all changed, but it now functions as a single family dwelling. It has an open stair. So as you walk in, I think there's photos and plans, you see pretty much a drawing room, for living room, and then a stair going up, open stair to sort of a den, and then bedrooms, and the kitchen and bath are in the rear of the first level. So it functions as a residence.
So
and it doesn't really work for mixed use, for example. I mean, to look at alternates or even to make it commercial. I mean, I guess it could be a store as a single store with a mezzanine or with a second floor. But so I guess.
So Greg, could you just maybe speak to, so the issue of the setbacks and the lot coverage, that piece of it, whether the building was commercial, residential, or whatever, the building is there existing on its lot. The setbacks are what they are.
Right.
So the change here, and I think from the application, the upper floor was a residence, was being used residentially.
Probably over the front
Yeah.
when it was a carriage repair.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now the real change to the dimensional requirements is the parking, the number of parking places. So as a commercial building with residents above versus now all residential, you're going to have a different number. I mean, you're not accommodating any parking, but the parking is going to be less intensive as a residence than it would have been commercial, so you're less out of compliance. If you want to just speak to that aspect of it.
Yeah, I filed some supplemental. Yeah, if you looked at it as all commercial and you say you have 2,600 square feet roughly, you would be in the range at calculating the use group at 100 square feet per person. In a type B type of a business, you'd have as many as 26 people would be parking at a rate of 1 car per 2 occupants. So you would have a parking burden of 13 spaces. Whereas as a residence now, as a single family residence, that would be reduced to 2. So I feel that, given the congestion and parking demands of the waterfront district, that's I think a plus. I think it helps the situation in going forward.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, well, please.
How does the town council's determination of no parking requirements for Main Street and Water Street fall into this? Does the fact that we're talking about a residence change that?
It doesn't. This is not in the village business district.
Yeah.
This is in the waterfront.
Waterfront.
The waterfront, yeah.
Okay.
So it would need to come, whether it's a residence or a commercial space, it would have parking requirements. You're not able to meet, no matter what it is, there's no room on the property for any parking. And I think the case you're making is that the required parking load is less on a residential use than it is on a commercial or a mixed residential and commercial use.
Yes.
So you're lowering the intensity of the impact of the parking.
Yeah, I think, that would be the gist of it.
Yeah, and the rest of the dimensions, they sort of are what they are. Nothing that you're doing is changing the requirements of the setback or the lot coverage.
No, there's no physical change in the building proposed. So.
All right.
But Mr. Ellis, I just want to mention that as we learned in the CHOMP application, that the current tenant of this property leases a parking space from the abutting property owner.
Right. Yeah.
So you have
that parking space is in a right of way. So that parking space is extinguished by the existence of that right of way.
So you have, so as we said, basically said, there's 0 parking provided for this structure.
Right.
Right. So whether it was commercial or residential or a mix, there was no parking one way or the other.
Right.
And so the case you're making, I believe, is that we've discussed, if we did the parking calculation for it as all commercial or mixed commercial and residential or all residential, the all residential option is the least intensive parking requirement. So that would be the least relief that you would be seeking there.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Let me go through the board here. Mr. Holby.
So the current tenant, she says she's in our last meeting, she mentioned that she was doing many renovations. Is this, I know this is a cart before the horse kind of thing, but how many years has the cart been before the horse? Is it just this year, or was it commercial 5 years ago, or has it been really residential for many years and we just want to clean up the paperwork here?
Could I chime in on that?
Yeah.
Mr. Cabral, go ahead.
Yeah, this is an existing commercial building that's been used as a residence for quite some time now illegally. So it's a change of use, and we have to look at it like a brand new building. Unfortunately, that's why they have to go before the Building Board of Appeals. And the zoning confusion in the application is, they're not getting relief from the zoning, but the building has been used as a single-family dwelling without a change of use or permits for quite some time. I think the owner even lived in this building for a while before
So-
the tenant moved in.
So Tony, do you have any sense, did any residential occupancy occur in this building prior to the enactment of the zoning ordinance?
Not that I'm aware of. This, as far as I know, this was always a commercial building.
So, but you said hold on, so you said that even the owner had lived there for some time. So but is it your position that any residential activity, whenever it started after the adoption of the zoning ordinance?
I don't know that Mr. Cavallo knows that. He wasn't here when that was adopted, but I would suggest in light of my opening statement as to pending litigation, Mr. Bullock owns the entire site. Could he provide parking for his tenant somewhere else on this site? Probably yes. I think you need to take that into consideration in your decision.
Well,
But isn't this build,
park-
hold on, isn't this building on its own lot?
Yes, it is, and it covers the entire lot.
Yes. So there is no, whether Mr. Bullock, what Mr. Bullock does or doesn't provide, no one can physically provide parking on the lot that is assigned to this building. Parking be some other, that's a possibility, but it's physically impossible to provide parking on the lot itself assigned to this building.
That's correct, unless you converted a portion of the building to a garage or something.
Yes, unless there was some structural modification.
That would have
the
to,
building.
but that's, yeah, and unfortunately, that would have to come through a right of way because that would only be available in the rear. Of which.
So
there's
I think as
no
we've
access.
stated, if it was a completely commercial building, there would be a certain parking count required at 250 square feet per space.
Well, it is a
Well, if it was an office, the 5 spaces and all this. So there's a certain number that would be required for commercial.
Well,
We
Andrew,
had part residents and, yes.
Andrew,
Commercial building now.
yeah, it is an existing commercial building, non-conforming as far as the parking goes. So
Yes.
the hypothetical you're talking about is if we were to tear it down and build a new commercial building at this time, we'd be required to provide parking. But it's an existing commercial building without any parking, which is grandfathered in for that use. We changed the use to residential. Now we have to look at it like a brand new building again, and it has to come into compliance with all the code requirements, zoning as well as building.
Yeah, and so it would need 2 parking places, and the relief they're asking for is relief from the parking requirement because there is no physical space on the lot to provide parking.
Correct.
Right.
And so if a new, in the same vein, if a new business were to go into there, if someone wanted to open a barber shop or, a cafe or something, that new business would have to meet the parking requirements that would serve that business, which would be more intensive parking requirements than if it were to be used as a residence.
Ben, can you please weigh in on this? So if it's a commercial building, I mean, every time there's a change of use, if it's a permitted use in the waterfront district, does every change of use require a special use permit?
You mean a change of occupant?
Change of occupant.
My analysis of this application is that the property owner has the right to use that as a residential use just by right.
Yes, by right.
What we're doing here today is making the pre-existing non-conformity in terms of dimension and parking lawful, which I believe is entitled to because it's already there, the size of the lot's already established, and the building itself is not being changed. And he's going from a commercial use, which is allowed by special use permit, to a permitted use. That's my
Yeah, so actually the use the change of the use, I mean, we're straight up in the use tables, residence is a permitted use. You know, if someone was coming and wanted to open some other kind of commercial thing, then we'd have to be going through a special use process. And so by right, this thing, whether it has been used as a residence or has not been used as a residence, by the use tables, it appears the owner has every right to use it as a residence. Now, having said that, there are separate building code implications, which is another matter when you change the code classification use group. That is a different set of facts. But in terms of zoning, you know, I think it's pretty clear that the owner has the right to use the property from a zoning standpoint as residence, and that the existing conditions of the building, the setbacks are what they are. And as a residence, it's required to have 2 parking spaces, and they're asking for relief on those 2 parking spaces. And the hardship is because there is physically no space available on the property.
That's correct. That's correct. The,
All right.
they have the right to change the use from an existing commercial building to a single-family dwelling. That's a permitted use in the zone.
Yeah, that's a permitted use.
But they still need relief from this board for
Yes.
whatever zoning regulations require, parking in this case. And unfortunately, because of the building code and the distance to the property lines, we've got some problems there. We'll deal with it with the Board of Appeals.
Yeah, so we'll deal with that separately. So the thing that we're considering here is not related to the use other than the number of parking spaces. The setbacks pertain to the building, not the use of the building. So with that, Barrett, did you have anything further you wanted to clarify on what are the parameters here?
I don't believe so. I think we've been clarified that it's been used as a residence for several years, and I believe it's probably more than 20 years. And I understand that the lot lines are, one is on top, the house is on top of it, and the other is a couple of feet away, 2 feet away. And that's it. That's all.
Okay. Great. Mr. Thibodeau?
I'm all set at this time.
Good. Mr. Ranone?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. Nystrom?
No questions.
Mr. Elves?
No questions.
Mr. Atwood?
No questions.
Okay, so let's go to the public portion of the hearing. If there's anyone who's interested, please indicate so.
Mr. Rawls or Mr. Glenn, do you have anything you want to add? Hearing none. Mr.
Okay.
Ellis?
All right, fine. Mr. Spees, do you have any other clarifications or information to present specifically about the dimensional relief for the parking and the dimensional relief for the setbacks and lot coverage?
No, I think we've stated it. You know, I have gotten we're working with the owner. We've begun to get a survey, property boundary survey, and upgraded. Today we received the elevation certificate and preparing for any CRMC concerns for an assent letter. So we're basically, getting it street legal, as it were, and did a fairly thorough review of it. Structurally, I think it's sound, and the new renovations have, while maybe not permitted formally, appear to be been done with a good quality. So.
Yeah, well, that would largely be a matter for the building code board that maybe we'll hear about shortly.
Yeah, we'll talk about that there. But I think as far as zoning, it just seems it's a historical, it'd be a shame to, lose it or, render it unusable. It seems to be serving a fine purpose. And like I said, the parking intensity is less in an area that's suddenly intense. So.
Mhm. Okay, is there any further discussion from the board? Would someone like to put forward a motion on this application?
I can make a motion with some help from the chairman, probably.
We'll see. Have a crack at it.
I vote to approve application 21-36, Paul Bullock, owner, and Greg Spees, applicant, 277 Water Street, plat map 4, lot 25, request for a variance under sections 32-78 and 32-105 to change use from a commercial to single-family dwelling with less than the required parking, frontage, front, rear, and side yard setbacks, and to exceed the maximum lot coverage in the waterfront zoning district. I might say restaurant, and I won't. District. The dimensional use is due to a hardship due to the unique characteristics of the subject land and structure. The house is the building is basically on the lot. The hardship is not a result of any prior action of the applicant and does not result primarily from the desire to realize any greater financial gain. The granting of the variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area, and the request conforms with the purpose and intent of the Warren zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan. I would say the applicant is trying to get the house into compliance, and we understand that the one side of the house is on the lot line. There's 2 feet of side yard setback on the other side of the house, and virtually no front and back setbacks. It is a non-conforming lot, and if we do grant this, the parking would go, the required parking for a new commercial building would be about 13 parking spaces, and we're bringing that down to 2, and we are granting relief from the 2 for a residential space because the building has no access to, the lot has no access to parking, being that the house sits on the lot. It is the relief, it is the least relief necessary. He is asking, and if we did not grant this application, it would virtually not allow the building to be used in a way that would benefit the downtown area. It would be I don't know what would happen to it, but at least it would keep the building occupied and the little area more vibrant.
And I think we should condition it that a site survey be submitted to clearly delineate the exact dimensions of the relationship between the building and the lot lines and the exact square footage of the building coverage in relation to the size of the lot that's been presented, so that can all be clearly documented. Is there any
Mr. Hoby has
other?
made a motion with the addition from Mr. Ellis. Is there any additions to that? There a second?
This is
I'll
Mr.
second it.
Renaud. I'll second.
Mr. No makes second. I'll do the roll call. Mr. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Nystrom,
Aye.
Mr. Hoby,
Aye.
Mr. Renaud,
Aye.
Mr. Thibodeau.
Aye.
I believe I caught everybody.
All right, so I think we've dispensed with that piece of it. So if you just want to wait a little bit, Mr. Spees, while we finish the zoning agenda, then we will reconvene and address your building code issue.
The next application is 21-37440 Main Street LLC owner Alexander, and I'll apologize for mispronouncing your name, Jensic, applicant, 438 Main Street, plat map 4, lot 63. We request for a special use permit under section 3251 to allow a restaurant in the VB zoning district. I know that the applicant is here and is anxious to tell you of what he would like to do at this location. So Alexander, if you would just state your name and address for the record, and then just give a summary of what it is you would like to do here, please.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Alexander Janic is my name. Residential address is 39 Taft Avenue, Providence, Rhode Island. We are looking on starting a crepe shop there on the main street. It is a corner of Child and Main Street. There are a couple of restaurants around. Very corner right next to our location is a juice bar. On the other side is Galactic Theater. Across the street is another restaurant. We are looking on starting the crepe shop. It is called Happy Place Creperie. Our main thing is our crepes, coffees, non-alcoholic beverages, bright light, happy place, easy accessible. We don't have major cooking. There are no fryers. There is no open flames. Crepes are made on a flat grills. And that's it. Space is already done there. What I understood, there was the question is about the parking. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. And then the whole building is exempt, or the part of the town exempt from that.
Parking is not an issue for you, Alexander, so we don't need to get into it.
Yeah, you're in the village business district, so you have no requirement for the parking.
You're in a happy place with respect to parking.
It is a happy place. There is a back exit. Fire chief was there. It seems like spot is totally fine, but I was told to come in front of you.
Yeah, so you're coming here for a special. You're coming here for a special use permit, which allows you to have a restaurant in the existing space there. So your restaurant, you just speak a little bit about what will be the hours of operation of the restaurant.
Okay, hours will be probably matching what is happening around. It seems like 9 o'clock in the morning is earliest. I think 8 is too early for us. Let's consider it. So let's say 8 till some decent hours in afternoon, maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I don't think after 9. We don't plan on staying late open. So neighbor next door is a Galactic Theater. They have a live music venue. They stay later in the evening. We're not going to stay that long.
So 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. is what you're proposing?
Something like that. I'm sorry, I can't tell right now, but something like that.
All right, and would that be 7 days a week, or what would be the plan for that?
7 days, 6 for sure. 7 days, hopefully. We'll see how it goes.
Right.
It is a really small operation. It's a one-man show, pretty much. It's me.
Yep. All right.
And
so
my wife,
at
2
max,
people, so.
yes, at maximum, you're going to be 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. And you're not going to have any entertainment inside this venue, because that would be a different issue to go before town council. It's just a cafe type of atmosphere. That's correct?
That's right. No entertainment.
Yeah, and there's no heavy cooking. There's no fumes or exhaust hood type of thing that you have to deal with here.
No.
Okay.
We don't have
and
any flames or fires.
And how are deliveries of your supplies happening?
They have not happened yet. We are still building the place.
Yeah. So is there a way? So how does just describe, like, when you need a product for your cafe, do you bring that in yourself, or does a delivery truck come? What is the procedure?
I believe there will be both. Delivery truck, probably. I'm sorry, I don't have answers for this. Delivery truck, probably, but it is a small operation. I'm thinking like 100 servings in a day we'll have. 150. So I don't think there will be a humongous volume on a delivery also, and the big trucks. We don't have raw meats or anything, so everything is dry goods. And I don't know. I'll talk to the delivery people how they want to do it. It is usually in the mornings. So
And
we'll
so
do it
what-
before the opening.
Yeah, so what time would be the earliest time you would have a delivery of any kind?
8. Like if I
All
open
right.
at 9, then 8 o'clock.
It's fine. It's perfectly fine. And you've stated you feel that the use of the cafe is compatible with Main Street, that there's other, businesses similar, other variety of businesses. And this is there's currently, the space is empty, correct?
Correct. Correct.
So so you would be filling in a vacant storefront on Main Street.
That's right.
And you hope to attract pedestrians walking by to stop in and participate.
That's right. There is a busy traffic, as everyone knows. There on the street, cars driving.
Yeah.
I think the synergy will be really good with two businesses on both sides. One is a juice bar that works first part of the day until 4 p.m. And then the bar, Galactic Theater, starts after 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. So I think in between us joining them, like bridging that times, like having whole day operation will be beneficial for all 3 of our businesses.
Yeah, and you're going to be compliant with whatever the health department requires for the restaurant, as well as the fire marshal's requirements.
Absolutely, yeah. There is no way around it, and I don't have any intentions to jeopardize anyone's safety there, in food or safety with fire. Both health inspector and fire chief were at the space already. There are no issues. It's not final. I have to get health department signature when space is done, but I submitted all the plans and it's going in a good direction.
Okay. Mr. Holby.
Mr. Ellis, before Mr. Holby speaks, I want to just reference the fact that this is on a state road and it is adjacent to a complicated intersection. So, and I'm very supportive of what Alexander wants to do here. I just would like there to be some specific language, if this is approved, with respect to deliveries, that we're not in any way inhibiting traffic on Main Street. That's going to impact that intersection with Child in Maine or Market in Maine with deliveries. I mean, it is a state road, but just this could go sideways.
I think we can stipulate that deliveries have to conform to all traffic and parking regulations and cannot obstruct traffic or obstruct the sidewalk, meaning the trucks cannot drive up onto the sidewalk. So however you're getting deliveries, they need to be in an off-street location, so they're not creating some kind of nuisance or hazard. And it sounds like your deliveries would be minimal, and sometimes you may be bringing the supplies yourself.
That's right. Quick and easy, I'm sure. And I'll make sure that we do not block the traffic. It is one lane going in front of us. There is a parking lane also that is usually in the mornings. It's usually available. I promise I'll make sure that delivery trucks don't block. There is a bus stop in front of on the very corner, so they don't go on a bus stop, or they don't block traffic on either of any of the streets surrounding. If that means that I have to go and wheel delivery, I'll do that, I promise. There will be no issues on that.
I believe you'll take appropriate precautions. Now, Mr. Holby, did you want to comment?
I'm pretty good with everything. I did have a question on the stove. I'm not much of a cook myself, and I've burnt many things and I've smoked things up. Is there no venting on the stove whatsoever? I mean, most kitchens have a small vent, or is it something that just goes out the back of the building? Is there the fire department say there's no need for any venting?
So fire department and health department are cool with no venting. There is a AC unit that is doing venting. This is the equipment. is the crepe maker is in a category of toasters. There is a just a flat burner. The dough, the batter is poured cold on top of the flat surface. It gets done in 1 minute, and that's it. There are
I
no
think it's
major smokes.
It's a griddle. It's not even really a stove. Is that correct?
It's not a stove, and it is not a it's like a flat top. I think grill gives me idea of something that is smoky, but it is not like that. There is no evaporation of oils. Of any kind.
There are no grease-laden vapors.
There are no grease, exactly. There is no grease vapors.
And that's the only thing you're cooking in there is the crepes, and then whatever toppings or things you have are not cooked.
That's right.
components.
That's the only warm thing. It's like if you would want to make tortilla warm, this is what it does. It just warms it up on both sides. It is very thin. It is like an American pancake, but thin.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets just kind of warmed or burned. Like it gets cooked on one side, then you flip it on the other side while we are filling it in. It goes in 1 minute. It is really quick.
Yes, I've seen Julia Child make them, so I've got a good idea of what it might be.
Will you serve coffee or tea there?
Coffees, teas. I'll have blenders. We'll do fresh juices. Agua fresca is called in Mexico. I don't know what is it called. Maybe like so blending fruit, lemon juice, like fruit lemonades, that kind of stuff. Cold salads that guests can pick up easy. Chia puddings, soft beverages. And that's it. Quick and easy, like everything should be. My idea is to have a place where the food will be very tasty and good quality, I believe, in Whole Foods. And but quick and easy to grab. I'm expecting to be mainly to go. I have 10, 14 seats at max inside if someone wants to come and sit down. Easy operation.
Okay.
I would like to call it small footprint operation. Not much garbage to be taken away and deal with. So it's all.
Is there a dumpster or trash receptacle on the property where the garbage is going to be placed?
There are garbage for a whole entire building.
And that's at the back of the building?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Thibodeau?
I'm all set.
Super. Mr. Ranone?
No questions.
Mr. Nystrom?
No questions.
Mr. Elves?
I have a couple of questions.
Certainly.
So the cooking unit you're using is electric, not gas, right?
That's right.
Okay, so that's why it's usable without a ventilation system. Also, on deliveries, can the deliveries be brought in through the back? Is there room in that corridor to deliver off of Child Street?
Yeah, there is a room. There is a little from the Child Street. There is a little. I think it is a 3 feet. It is minimal. I would imagine. I'm not sure. I didn't measure, but there is an access way on the back, so it is accessible. I have back door.
Okay, and you're complying with food service, and one of you have food service certificates from the health department?
I would just say that, the town council approved his license subject to approval of the zoning board. So he has to meet all of the Department of Health regulations, all the regulations of the fire marshal and the fire chief.
Okay. All right. I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Atwood? No.
I got nothing.
All right. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to offer any commentary on this application?
And I will repeat, raise your hand or have some kind of, not seeing anything, Mr.
Okay, terrific. Do you have anything, does the applicant have anything further you'd like to explain? I think we pretty much covered all the bases here.
I don't have anything else. I want to thank you all for your time, and I want to invite you for a good, for a tasty bite at the Happy Place.
Well, thank
We all
you
need
for
to
your
get to a happy place.
Yes. thank you for your interest in Warren. Is there any further discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
I can make a motion
Okay, thank you.
to approve application 21-37, 440 Main Street LLC, owner and Alexander Janik,
Janich.
438 Main Street, plat map 4, lot 63, request for a special use permit under section 32-51 to allow a restaurant in the village zoning district. The special use of opening the restaurant at 440 Main Street. Is that the?
I
Will
think
be.
it's 430. I think it's 438.
Yeah, I think it's 438. The special use will be compatible with the neighboring land uses. We have several restaurants on Main Street, and this sounds a little different and should fit right in. Give the Main Street a little vibrancy. The special use will not create a hazard in the neighborhood. It's it will fit right in, and it's a vacant space, so that will be for the neighborhood. The special use permit will be compatible with the community comprehensive plan, and the public convenience and welfare will be served. Getting a cup of tea and some fresh crepes would be nice for many neighbors. Some special conditions that we wanted to put on there. The hours of operation should be between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m.
I think 8 a.m. maybe.
8 p.m.
Yeah, it'd be a short window of operation
Yeah,
there.
sorry about that. 8 a.m.
Good luck.
You like making money.
And 7 days a week. That will be, I'll need a vacation after a few of those weeks, I'm sure. The fire department, it should be subject to the approvals, the official approvals of the fire department and health department. Deliveries, we hope to have done in the rear if he can, or the applicant states that there won't be much to bring in. If he does, perhaps they can be done in the back, and they should be done after 8 a.m. We want to also put special language in that we know that it's a state road, and we want to make sure that the deliveries do not hinder any traffic on Main Street and Child Street. I think that's it.
May I ask a question really quickly?
Yes.
Does town prefer deliveries to be done as early or not too early? You said after 8 p.m.
At 8 a.m.
8 a.m. After 8 a.m. Did I understand that right? So you don't want it early. You don't want it at 7. You want it.
Well,
I mean, Alexander, I mean, the plan is that you don't obstruct traffic on Main Street. You know, so if we have problems on Water Street, that particularly with some of the restaurants, the liquor vendors, you know, have their deliveries at 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, and on a narrow street that causes traffic problems. So the suggestion is that, and I don't think that you're going to have a lot of big truck deliveries, but I mean, I don't know that earlier is better, in particular in terms of commuters and the bus traffic. I think that loading from the rear is preferred.
Okay.
Having your deliveries not come off of Main Street, but come from the rear of the building.
Yeah, and usually the concern also with deliveries is if they start too early, that if there's slamming doors of trucks, it wakes up people. I mean, I don't think you're going to have that kind of situation. But certainly, you know, if you wanted the deliveries part to be 7 a.m., I mean, we could make it that way. Frankly, I think probably mid-morning, like 10 or 11, if you can get them in there before on a day when you're not open or something, but certainly 8 o'clock, you know, is not going to bother anyone.
I would just suggest that you condition it that the deliveries not be from Main Street.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, whatever works. I understand that obstructing traffic is an issue here, and I'll make sure that does not happen.
All right, so we said the condition will be that the deliveries are happening not on Main Street, but at the rear of the building via Child Street.
It will be done at a time where it will not disturb residents of the upstairs of these buildings.
Okay.
All right, was there anything else? Is there a second?
There's a motion by Mr. Holby with some conditions that the deliveries not be done from Main Street, that they be done at reasonable hours, not to disrupt the residents. Is there a second to Mr. Holby's motion?
I'll second it.
Mr. Nystrom makes the second. You will do the roll call. Mr. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Nystrom,
Aye.
Mr. Renone,
Aye.
Mr. Holby,
Aye.
and Mr. Thibodeau,
Aye.
and Mr. Ellis.
I think I voted to start with.
Okay, so you voted twice. That's good.
Yeah.
So, Alexander, we will look forward to seeing you getting up and running. And we all are searching after 15 months of craziness for a happy place. So thank you for the name.
Thank you, gentlemen. You have a great
Have
evening.
have a nice, lovely evening.
Mr. Ellis, that concludes the agenda for the Zoning Board of Review.
Unless there is any commentary on administrative matters, there's nothing on the agenda. So without further ado, if someone would like to make a motion to close, to adjourn the zoning hearing.
This is Mr. Renone, so moved.
Is there a second?
This is Mr. Holby, second.
All right, Mr. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Nystrom,
Aye.
Mr. Renone,
Aye.
Mr. Holby,
Aye.
Mr. Thibodeau.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Does the stenographer need relief before we open the building code board?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please continue.
Delighted, Heidi, excellent. So we'll continue now to the meeting of the Warren Building Code Board of Appeals. So Mr. Rulli, if you want to call the roll.
Sure. Mr. Ellis is here, Mr. Nystrom is here, Mr. Holby is here, Mr. Renone is here, and Mr. Thibodeau is here, and both Mr. Alves and Mr. Atwood are here as alternates, so you have a full board and quorum. So the first matter is new business application 21-03 BOA. Paul Bullock, owner, and Craig Splees, applicant, 77 Water Street. Plat map for lot 25, request for a variance under section R302.1, subsection 1 of the 2019 Rhode Island 1 and 2 family dwelling code to allow openings within 3 feet of the property line within the waterfront zoning district. And at that point, I will defer to Mr. Cavallo to translate what all that means.
Yeah, so Tony, do you want to go ahead and just give a summary of why the residential code does not allow openings in an exterior wall that close to the property line?
Well,
For those of us who aren't architects.
yeah, these are considered fire separation distances.
Mm-hmm.
So in converting from a commercial building, existing historical commercial building to a single family dwelling, we have to look at it as a brand new building in our plan review, and can't have any openings less than 3 feet to the property line. That's why
And
we're
can
here.
you, yeah, and so can you just describe on which sides of the building are there issues with the openings?
Both sides.
Both of the long sides, that being the north and the south?
Yes, the front is okay because you can use the center line of the street as the property line, imaginary property line for a fire separation distance.
So is there, so that's, it's too close to the property line. Can you explain, are there any walls of any adjacent structures directly across from these openings?
No.
So the openings open to air, essentially. Paved area, and there is space between that and the next adjacent structure.
Yes.
All right, so Mr. Spees, do you want to explain your logic here with regard to the existing openings and why you don't feel they pose a fire hazard if they were to be granted that they could remain.
Well, we measured the windows, and they're really within just a half an inch of, complying as your normal 30-inch by 54-inch window, that's typically used as a residential egress on a second floor. And so as far as it functioning as a building without adjacent buildings, it would provide that second egress from the.
So are the windows only on the second floor that are in question, or are they also on the first floor?
Well, the first floor I don't think they're all going to be problematic in the sense that they're on the property line. But as far as their actual function in a fire, they would typically, it's the second floor that really is the one you want to use to be able to be used as an egress.
So in
that sense, I think they're in compliance. They're really right about.
So there's two questions here. That the reason they're not allowed on the property line from the code standpoint is more for the spread of fire from one building to another building. That if you have openings in close proximity to the property line and you have another building right there,
right,
fire could penetrate that opening and then spread to the adjacent building.
Right.
Counter to that, the openings are providing a second emergency egress if the fire department had to use a ladder or something, or the door was obstructed, that someone would have to be able to exit through the window. And if they were to be filled in and blocked over, is it your position that it would make the occupants of the building less safe?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, say somebody wanted to construct another building next to it, they'd be sort of within their rights to build to the property line in a commercial zone. And then you'd have a fire separation issue, and you can do a number of things. You could put rated walls, you'd have to fill in the windows, and or deluge systems of sprinklers have been employed for those kinds of hardships. But the rear, from an egress standpoint, the rear deck does provide some level of discharge and could have a fire escape or a stair, onto that, which would provide, I think, a second path of egress. But that would be assuming you could keep, the windows intact. I don't know. I think it would be prohibitive to put fire-rated glass or something on those windows. And I would also play the idea of historical fabric of the Harvard district.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that the windows are an existing historic feature of the building. They're not something that you or the tenant put in. It's part of the historic fabric that's already in place.
Yeah, I was involved with the two buildings down. I don't know if you've been down to Bristol. The Gladding's shop across from Aiden's, next to the fire station. There's two buildings that have been restored. They were allowed to be kept and as part of the fabric of the historical district there. And I think this one serves a similar purpose.
And so in your experience, would you say it's fairly typical that in a historic district, historic buildings are given some leniency with regard to compliance to preserve the existing historic character?
Yeah, and in those we did this. There was a similar thing. There were decks in the back that provided, they had some setback. They had some space between the buildings, but it wasn't, it wasn't what you would want, 10 feet or something. But it was enough. But the egress in the back, I think, was, mitigated that situation.
Yeah, so Tony, is there any concern regarding egress, or the specific concern is simply the distance from the window to the property line for the prevention of fire?
Yeah, that's the only concern. A single-family dwelling only is required to have one exit.
Yeah.
And the front door that opens onto the sidewalk could certainly serve as that. The door that has been historically used, since this has been being used as a single-family dwelling, is the side door back toward the rear of the property, but on the side.
Yeah.
That is right on the property line. So that's in order to continue the use of that as an egress door, you definitely need relief from the building code.
And that's the issue with respect to the right of way that came up in the CHOP application, because it's got a zero lot line.
Right.
That was a maintenance right of way more than anything else. So,
But so with the right of way there, it means that nothing can be constructed in the right of way or block the right of way. So it would be able to serve the purpose of egress, that if nothing is allowed in there, you would be able to walk through that right of way to exit from the building.
That's correct. Nothing can be built there and nothing can be parked there.
Yes.
Right.
So that space, in fact, given that right of way runs along that side of the building, it somewhat diminishes the concern of some potential future building being put there that fire could easily spread to, because nothing can be put in that right of way. So in that sense, there is some safeguard on that side of the building that nothing would be constructed within the space of that right of way. So maintaining some distance between them.
But Mr. Ellis, that's correct. If the Muse property, if they took that building down, again, they would have to meet the existing setback requirements. So nothing could be encroaching into those setbacks.
Yeah. Mr. Spees, has the fire chief done any sort of evaluation of this situation?
No, we're sort of, I think, sort of the next step. First we need to get the zoning out of the way, but I would be happy to take that to the next step if we need to continue this to get some readings on that.
Well, I think we're going to hear what the board has to say and where
if that would be the way, perhaps to get that kind of input. But,
yeah, the fire marshal would have to give approval. Any approval would have to be conditioned on the fire marshal.
Sure. And there, yeah. So I'm expecting that. But
yeah,
the fire department's concerned, and they would receive the plans for review even before they went to the building department. And their concern really would be for locations of smoke and carbon detectors, mostly to make it a safe residential building.
Yeah. And I think, and the concern with the windows from a fire prevention standpoint is that if a fire broke out in the subject building, the proximity to the property line might allow fire to spread to other buildings. But I think looking around the north end of Warren, in this case, at this location, there are no abutting buildings directly next to these openings, whereas there are numerous other buildings in town, historic buildings, that have openings on or in close proximity to the property line that in fact face directly another abutting building, that maybe pose a greater fire risk than what this might pose. So I'm interested to hear from the board what their thoughts are on this. If Mr. Holby would like to share his sentiments.
I think you've done an excellent job of bringing everything out to it. I have no problem leaving the building as is and granting the variance.
Okay, Mr. Thibodeau?
Yeah, I would also be inclined to want to leave the building as is. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Renone?
I would agree. I don't, based on the existing right of way and the fact that the opposite side of the building is used as a driveway right of way to a neighboring building that isn't going anywhere anytime soon, I don't foresee any future construction that's really going to be a significant fire hazard issue in this instance.
Okay, Mr. Nystrom? I think he had nothing to add.
Well, yeah, nothing to add.
Okay, Mr. Alves?
Yeah, I mean, due to the historic nature of the building, I think that we would keep it as is as well and grant it.
And Mr. Atwood?
No comments.
Okay. Does anyone in the public, or do we have public comment on this? No, we don't have public comment. So we'll come back to Mr. Spies. Do you have any other information you'd like to convey to us before we entertain a motion on this?
No, this has been helpful. I wanted to make sure that Mr. Carvalho, was satisfied that we could mitigate anything with the fire department, which I think we can. So I think this would be fine.
So is there any further discussion amongst the board, or would someone like to put forward a motion?
I would just ask the solicitor, are the standards to be applied in this case the same as the standards for any other variance?
No negative. So the standard here is when the opinion of this board that the enforcement of this particular section 310.11 of the building code would do a manifest injustice, which basically means obviously unfair, provided that the board finds the decision to grant a variance will not conflict with the general objectives of the code.
So if you wanted to incorporate what Mr. Farah just said into a motion.
And I think we can cite the things, Jason, that we've talked about, the lack of existing structures adjacent to it, the right of way, the historic nature, et cetera.
All right, I'll give that a shot. So I will move approval of application 21-03 BOA, Paul Bullock owner and Greg Spies applicant, 277 Water Street, plat map 4, lot 25, a request for a variance under section R302.1, section 1 of the 2019 Rhode Island 1 and 2 family dwelling code to allow openings within 3 feet of the property line in a W zoning district. In approving this variance, we find that it is the opinion of the Building Code Board of Appeals that in granting this variance to allow window openings within 3 feet of the property line, in this case on the property line, that those openings in the exterior walls of the structure in question will not be a conflict with the intent of the building code, in so much as there are no close proximity buildings within 10 feet, I believe, to either side of the existing structure. On one side of the building, there is an existing 20-foot right-of-way, which would preclude any new construction within that area. On the opposite side of the building, there is an active driveway for an existing business that is long-standing and not likely to go away anytime soon. With those being the existing conditions, we find that having window openings and door openings in the exterior walls of this building does not pose a fire hazard, as there are no adjacent structures and not likely to be any adjacent structures where fire could spread in the event of a fire in this building.
Want to note the historic nature of the building?
Thank you. Being a historic building, we would also note that it would be a detriment to the building and to the character of the surrounding neighborhood if significant alterations needed to be made to the exterior of this building in order to meet the requirements of the building code as written.
I would just ask Mr. Renone that you include that the consent of the fire marshal, that this meets all fire code requirements.
Yes, so we would further condition this approval on a fire marshal review of the current and any proposed plans for renovations to the building, and that the fire marshal appropriately weigh in on all aspects of safety and egress associated with the building.
So there's a motion. Does anyone like to add anything to Mr. Renone's motion? If not, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Nystrom seconds it. I think Mr. Holby tried to, but he was on mute, so he's excluded.
Edom.
Mr. Ellis,
Aye.
Mr. Holby,
Aye.
Mr. Renone,
Aye.
Mr. Nystrom,
Aye.
Mr. Thibodeau.
Aye.
We have it. There we go.
Okay, so good luck with finalizing that, Greg.
Yeah, I'll take those plans and start the fire review.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Great.
Unless there's any administrative matters for this board, we could entertain a motion to adjourn the hearing.
Make a motion to adjourn the hearing.
Mr. Holby makes the motion. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Renone makes a second. All in favor, just. hit
Aye.
Aye.
So just a reminder that you will be getting a link to the Robert's Rules of Order and Attorney General's Ethical Seminar. Please, if you have time, do that. That we will be in person and live in July. Thank
We're
God.
holding you to that.
Well, if the creek doesn't rise and all things are good, that's where we're going. So I do want to just say one thing real quickly, that Mr. Nystrom and Mr. Thibodeau have been kind enough to participate in our parking study management group, which is probably one of the better committees that I've got going right now. So thank you for that.
Well,
Right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.